Alright, so you know how to increase your attack, more specifically, infantry range, aka marksman, or lancer attack. All the places that you need to improve that in, okay, it's going to be partly your chief gear, not charms. Okay, that's one part of it. That's where you're going to get a lot of your attack stats from, is in the gear. The next place is obviously in research. Okay, you're going to get a lot of attack stats coming in from the research itself. Okay, and that's just in the battle tree. And the next place is actually in a lesser known place. A lot of people don't pay a ton of attention to is actually the heroes themselves. You go to the stats and look at their individual, you'll see that there's an attack stat. Obviously, the higher tier, better, newer hero is going to always have the highest stat possible. So epics and stuff like that are going to be lower. The other factor that kind of goes into this a little bit is whenever you're thinking in terms of attack stats, you also have to consider their exclusive gear, because this will vary depending on whether or not you're defending or rallying, but this is a factor as well, but it also plays into lethality and health. But whenever you're thinking in terms of attack, the question often becomes, is that for the hero or is it for the actual PvP attacking for infantry range or marksman or lancer? And if you're wondering like which is which, why does this matter, and so on and so on, the main distinguishable difference here is that if the hero's attack is being mentioned, we're often referring to that in arena. And if that's something that you're wanting to work on, then that's actually going to be something that involved with the hero gear. So in the hero gear itself, that actually increases the attack. Slightly different thing that we're focusing on today. But again, I bring that up in case you're trying to figure out which is which. That's one of the differences. Now, of course, the other place is actually in VIP. So you can get troop attack from VIP up to 16%. Now, of course, some other places that you can actually get some stats in is actually in pets. So there's both a skill bonus that's going to give you like a drop enemy lethality as well as HP, but there's also the not so well known place, because it's still kind of new, is in refining stats. You can actually improve the lethality and the health within the pets. It's one of those things that does come into into play here, so it's worth mentioning. Outside of that, though, of course, there's the actual tier troops itself, right? The tier of the troop also has an attack stat that varies depending on what the tier of the troop is. That's one thing else that you might have to consider. But as far as your attack stats go, there's actually even more stats than that. It's also in a lot of other places. So, like, for example, a lot of people don't pay a ton of attention to this, but if you look here, you'll actually see that says troop attack by 2%. Stat bonus is activated upon acquisition. And by acquisition, that is to say that you will get it once applied. So when you look at the march speeds, the marching is only going to apply marching speed for the most part. Nameplates don't appear to have anything. Neither, some avatar frames do, and it'll vary. Some of them are 1.5 to 2, but there is a stat change on the avatar frames. About the only other detail outside of all those things that I've mentioned, right, is then of course you have city buffs, which, as you might have noticed, there's city bonus. So you've got your individual buffs. Then again, I think it's kind of a no-brainer, but you've also got titles. So if you were to go to like the president and go to the center of the map, so I'll just attempt to do that here. I may struggle to actually do that. I don't know. We'll see here. See if I can go not far enough. Here we go. Here. I get like stretched out far enough to get to it here. Okay, so maybe I can get to it. Okay, so when you go into presidential perks, inside of each perk there's appointments. And the appointments in here, you can actually get lethality bonuses, troop attack bonuses, and other things. So there's some stats that come in from the ministers. Obviously, there are debuffs in here as well, but very few people actually find themselves in that situation. But again, I point that out because that's there. But for the most part, this is where most of your like attack, lethality, and HP is coming from. You know, of course, you should also take into consideration that like when you look at your buildings, there's, you know, your actual I want to say your individual here, like, I'm trying to think how to explain this in a way that makes sense. I guess like when you look at the buildings as a whole, right? So that is to say, like, you've got your storehouse, your embassy, your command center, all of these buildings cohesively together kind of build up to what effectively becomes your base. A lot of people don't pay a ton of attention to this, but in your city defense, this is what decides which heroes you actually get to use on defense. But yeah, you know, I mean, basically, those are all the places that, you know, as far as I know, stats are being acquired from. Of course, you know, you can find yourself, you know, wondering like what exactly does the temperature play a role in, and what controls what. There's obviously more things as the game progressively gets bigger and longer, and the end game's obviously its own animal in and of itself. But that's pretty much everywhere you have to look in case you're wanting to nitpick stats for any reason. That's basically everywhere you want to look. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.